Hi, this is Steve. Welcome back to Scale Model Kit Review. In this video, I continue to build Eaglemoss Back to the Future Delorean. I am on issue 59. Now on 59, we do a lot here. The box that came for pack 16, which contains 59, was huge. It had some big parts in it, and we'll see those in the following issues as the videos are produced. But anyway, in 59 we do a lot of details here, a lot of things to wire up all the electronics on it and mount the interior to the chassis. So pay attention to what's done here. Perhaps some of the tips I give you in this video will help you during your build. So without further ado, let's get started. And here's the magazine for issue 59. We have a lot to do here, and so before I actually start this stage, I'm going to go ahead and show you what you can do to prep yourself, because we're going to be installing the upper aft bulkhead and attaching a lot of components to that, including all the wiring, all the plugs to the circuit board. Now we want to verify that everything on the circuit board is plugged in correctly, and we'll go ahead and do a light test before we mount the interior to the chassis. So that's the game plan with this issue. We have a lot to do, and so let's look through the magazine real quick, and you can see it shows us the listing of parts here and everything involved there. If you haven't done so already, head over to Eaglemoss and subscribe to this. If you're unable to subscribe to it, they normally have a link that says, hey, I'm interested, send me an email, and I might subscribe to it. So you could always click that button also. But I'm having a lot of fun with this, and it's just an iconic vehicle. It's going to be wonderful to have in your collection. All the list of our parts. Right away we start off with, like I was saying, attaching some components to the bulkhead. And you can see here we install some stuff here. More components there. And we just move all the way through, and then they want us to attach the aft bulkhead down right here and put our screws in. As we do that, then we start attaching more components, and this is where we start installing our wiring. Let me get a close-up view of that. Right here you can see they want us to plug in socket 16. Make sure 16 is facing the number that's on the board there, and it's faced up. Also verify that your wiring is correct too. In this case, the blue wire, if this is the black and blue wire, the blue wire is closest to the 16. Okay, that matters because if the polarity is thrown off, your lights may not work. I'll give you another example here too that we're going to kind of follow along as we go. And same thing here, follow along with 15 matches the 15 on the circuit board. And then they want us to plug in the main connector. We're going to leave that off because it's going to be easier for you to reach down below and plug in your other connectors that we're putting in a little bit later in this stage. So that right there I'm just going to leave off for now. And as you can see, we have all these connectors that need to go in, and just take note of the colors of the wires that are closest to the point of the numbers that are on the circuit board. And you don't want to get those switched around. And then before we actually mount this down to the chassis, I'm going to put batteries in the battery compartment, and we're going to check the lights. If the lights all function and work good, then I will proceed to mount down all the screws. Okay, we'll move on through the instructions here, an overall view, and you can see Like I said, we're going to have a lot of wiring we need to mount up and some connectors for some of the hoses and stuff that go on the back. And we'll mount the aft bulkhead in over there. And then more of the connectors on the circuit board. We'll do our light test, and then we'll hook up our steering on the front there. And then before we mount this down, there's a part on the chassis that we need to deal with too, and I'll explain that in the video as we go along. So the way the chassis sits down, the interior sits down on the chassis nice and even, and apparently one of the button head bolts that's underneath there will interfere with that. We're going to try to change that out and fix that. Alright, so moving on, connecting everything, securing the steering, mounting the interior. Then our first article here is Time Traveler's Guide, Twin Pines Mall. Two become one, so that article is pretty cool there. Then they give us a preview of the upper frame, and I have that on hand, and that's a huge box. This pack that we received is a huge pack. It's a big box that arrived. So let me get the parts out and we'll get started. Here's issue 59 parts, which is, I call it stage 59. But this is part of your mailing parts pack 16. Remember, in 16 you'll receive 4 issues. So this is just the first issue that we'll begin with pack 16. But these are all the parts we're going to deal with here. Plus we have a lot more to do, but I'll take these out and we'll get a closer look. Here's a close-up of those parts. We received 2 cables, a long one and a short one. We also received what we call a pipe, and the wiring and LED lights for the Christmas tree, as they call it. The fan, the bracket that holds down the steering, AP, BM, DM, and FP screws. We also received a bag of some brackets and a tab. You can see that there. So as we start assembling this and adding components to it, we may have to use some super glue to attach everything in place. And this is the super glue I like to use. I also like to apply the super glue with a glue looper tool, and that's this right here. So we install this pipe first, and that inserts through that, and there you go. The pipe is installed. Next we install these brackets on the cable, and that just goes through that. And they say around 3 centimeters. But I know where it's going to go, so it's going to go on right there. So that's about right there. Put the next bracket on. Just like that. Then this mounts on our aft bulkhead. Just like that. And I'll probably tack that down with some super glue so we don't lose it. When this mounts on the bulkhead, it mounts like that. And you can see there's an alignment tab here. And our cabling needs to come off the top of it. So we'll go ahead and put that on. Perfect. And then we can go ahead and mount this. 2 AP screws go into this. That's good there. And it's mounted there. Next, go ahead and put the LED lights into the Christmas tree. And that's these right here. And simply just inserts into that hole and into that hole. There that is. I'm just going to put a touch of super glue on those to secure them. And super glue on these just to secure them. Good. Then we secure the wiring. And go ahead and fold this down. And fold that one down so it's out of the way. And we'll secure our wiring. With that tab. And there that is. That looks good there. Now we need to secure this cabling, and I think the first one to do would be there's the speaker item here, and that goes right there on that second tab. Just like that. And then the second one, that runs across and goes on the bottom of the speaker here. So that's simple enough to do. There that is. And should be enough slack to keep that around. Now we'll bring over the interior and get ready to mount this to the aft bulkhead. Okay, here's our interior, and you can see we have a lot of cabling and wiring going on here on the back end, and then remember we put our circuit board on and we have all our wiring running from the circuit board. Get you a close-up here. Remember in issue 56 we installed all our wiring onto the circuit board, and they do tell you to make sure that you follow the instructions just like the picture shows. So if you'll notice that the numbers match their circuit board, they're facing the side of the circuit board. But what I also did is I verified the color of the wiring was correct. So in this case it was a white and gray, it was a white and brown, it was an orange and brown, and a black and brown. So they did all correspond and they all did check out. So I made sure that they are good for both sides of the terminals there. Okay. So that's what was checked out there. Now let's get ready to install this aft bulkhead. And on the aft bulkhead we have this pipe right here running to the back, and that's going to mount to that aft bulkhead. So before we put this down, we want to make sure that all our wiring and everything is out of the way and we don't trap anything behind there. And we're going to hook this pipe up. Okay. Now in order to hook this pipe up, I'm going to go ahead and super glue it. I'll put some super glue on that part that it goes onto. And make sure all my pipe's out of the way. All this is out of the way. And hook my pipe to it. Turn this over. Remember, 4 screws go into this. And this is the last one, nice and tight. Turn it over. And that's how that looks there. You see that pipe right there? I'm going to plug that in. That's tight there. Next, that pipe goes in there, just like that. And an FP screw goes in on the back side. That's good there. In issue 53, they have you put this wire 49G, and it has a black metal cap on the end of it. Remember, that goes underneath this fire extinguisher mount here, and you can see how it goes into the side of it there. Let's move on. I'm going to go out of order when I install these cables. 59D is the bigger cable. That goes on the bottom here. Just like that. And then the 2 smaller cables, 49C for both, they go on next. Just like that. And the last cable here, small cable that is. Just like that. And then we take our wire bundle, 57I, and that goes on top. And there's all those cables together. Next, we'll put the cables in over here on this junction box. We put the larger of the cable, which is this one right here, 53E, on the bottom. Kind of position it there. And I'll push it in. There we go. It's snapped in. Wire bundle goes on next. That's 53F. The numbers correspond to the issue that we received them. That's good there. And then we put 2 smaller cables on. 57J for both of those. That's good there. I may tap a little bit of super glue on them so they don't come loose. And like always, I'm going to protect my LED lights and contacts with slick tulip paint, and that's very thick acrylic paint, but it's good for light blocking, which is what this will do. It will actually light block these LEDs. And protect them. And it can easily be removed later on. So that was the Christmas tree I just did. Now we'll do the flux capacitor. And let that dry. Now I begin connecting up all the wire plugs, and this is wire plug number 15, and that goes to the Christmas tree. Looking at the illustration, it looks like the two white wires need to be closest to the 15, and the 15 needs to face the circuit board like I talked about earlier. The polarity on these is very specific because these are LEDs. They won't function if it's installed upside down with the polarity. So that's 15, that's in. Next they want us to plug in 16. And 16 is the flux capacitor. And it's a blue and a black wire. And it looks like it's correctly installed. The blue should be closest to the 16. And there you have it. Then they want us to plug in the very large plug for this, and I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm going to hold off because it's going to be easier to reach and plug some of these other ones next. All right, let me bring the chassis over, and we're going to get all the other wires from there and start plugging them in some of the other contacts here. Next wire we hook up is number 19. It looks like to be one of the headlight wires. It corresponds. So the blue wire needs to be closest to the 19, and the 19 needs to be facing up. So we'll insert that in. That's good there. And I took out wires 20 and 21, so that way these would reach. Be easier for me to reach them. We'll put 20 and 21 back in. There's 20. And 21. Okay. Next we put in 22. Same thing, the blue wire for 22 needs to be closest to the number, and it is. And there's 22. And I got 23 wire in. The blue wire is on top closest to the number, and that should be correct. I'm going to put the rest of the wires in, and I'll be back. Another mod that you might want to think about doing before you lay down the interior are these screws right here. There's one on each side here, and they're normally button heads, but I put flat head screws on these because they interfere with the chassis. When you go to set the interior floor down, they interfere down here with the beam on the chassis. So you want to have them kind of out of the way. And if you don't have spare screws, you could always just remove the one screw on the driver's side where the steering is, because that's what the whole issue is there. Now I can hook up the large plug wire, the F terminal and the right terminal. So the F goes on the outside, and this is a tight fit. And that is in. And next, the power wire, plus and minus. Looks like the minus goes on the bottom and the plus goes on top. I'm sorry, the plus goes on the bottom, as you can see, and the minus goes on top. And everything's plugged in. So everything is plugged in. I'm going to go ahead and do a light test. I have the power switch turned on the bottom of the car. We'll do number 2. That's good. Number 3. That's good. Number 4. That's good there. Number 5. That's great there, along with the tree. So everything checks out. So everything checks out. Now we lay the interior down on the chassis. We want to make sure that our steering shaft goes down through this slot and into the steering rod that's found inside. And we'll lay this down. It's on the shaft there. Everything looks lined up now. We have 4 screws we need to put in. Put 1 screw in there. That's in there. And we have one more step. Got to lock in the steering mechanism. Okay, like that. Make sure we don't smash those wires. And 2 BM screws go into that. And that's good there. And lastly, we should have at least 5 wires coming out the side on the right hand side here. And that completes issue 59. We really did a lot in this issue. We installed a lot of components on that aft bulkhead here, and we installed all our wiring on the circuit board on the back. We did a light test, and then lastly we installed our interior onto the chassis. So that was a lot of fun. So stay tuned for issue 60. I would like to thank all my subscribers. Hit the bell for all notifications and please give me a thumbs up. Head over to eaglemoss.com and subscribe to this today. If you can't subscribe, then push the button to show an interest so you'll get an email notification when they're ready to start new subscriptions. Happy modeling and take care.